Hello and welcome to National Park Wild. I'm Eric, continuing 2020 National Park recap. Last summer, I went to Glacier and Yellowstone National Park in one trip along with many others, and I had an incredible experience at Glacier, wondering if Yellowstone would be able to keep its throne as the best national park. I've already made a video about my first day, where I enjoyed Mammoth Hot Springs, Lamar Valley, Grand Canyon of the Yellowstone, and many other sites. However, the second day was just as good if not better, with many other incredible locations and sights to see. So let's talk about that today. Before I begin, I hope you'll subscribe to the channel. We have grown a lot lately, I really appreciate your support. I hope we can get to 200 subscribers soon. Now let's begin talking about what I did in Yellowstone National Park. It started off with us waking up at Canyon Village, because that's where we slept the night before. We went to a few overlooks in that area in the morning. It was very nice. The canyon is a great part of Yellowstone. Beautiful and an absolute must-see. And as we were leaving, we saw some bison and elk. One thing about Yellowstone for sure is that you are pretty much guaranteed to see great wildlife. And there are a few better places to go than Hayden Valley. Hayden Valley is where we went that morning, and we saw many bison, bald eagles, and a wolf. The wolf was far enough to see that we could not actually see it without a telescopic lens that some people we met were letting us look through. So we hardly even actually saw the wolf, but there was a black wolf there. And I was so excited I got to see that. Not really sure if I can claim I saw a wolf in Yellowstone, but there was a wolf where I was looking in Yellowstone and I got to see what it looked like, so I was really happy about that. Hayden Valley is just a fantastic place. Really nice river, some mountain backdrop, really beautiful. Between that and Lamar Valley, I think I liked Lamar more overall because I saw greater abundance of animals, but I did not see any wolves in Lamar Valley. But wildlife in Yellowstone is just fantastic no matter where you go. And speaking of which, as we were driving around the Yellowstone Lake area, a black bear ran across the road. We saw some cars stop, the guy was pointing, and the bear just runs across. That was really awesome. This is just the beginning of the day. After that, we did our first trail of the day. This was the Sulphur Cauldron Mud Volcano area. That was the first thing I did on my first trip to Yellowstone, and it was a nice trip down memory lane. I'm a sucker for geothermal features, so I very much enjoyed this. To add to that, we went on the Lake Overlook Trail, which is very beautiful, because Yellowstone Lake is just amazing. Massive mountains behind a huge lake. Beautiful snow-covered, really amazing sight. Yellowstone Lake is just a fantastic area to be around. There's a lot to see and do. We saw an elk at the end of the trail, and one of the highlights of this area is the West Thumb Geyser Basin. Right along the edge of the lake, there are some massive pools that seem to go infinitely deep, some small geyser areas, and there's even this one bubbling area that's actually in the lake, and that is such a sight to see. This area is really stunning and beautiful. This is just the first geothermal area that we saw that day, and that's one of my favorite things about Yellowstone, the geothermal areas. There's so much to see, and I will say this one gets reasonably crowded. We went late morning, I would say, and there were still quite a few people there, so keep that in mind when you're going to areas of the park. It's a lot more crowded in the south area overall at Yellowstone than the north part, but it was still a really awesome sight. After that, we went somewhere that we somehow did not go to the first time we went to Yellowstone, Grand Prismatic Spring. This is the single most beautiful sight in Yellowstone, and probably a top 5 in any national park. Only if you're into geothermal stuff a lot like I am maybe, but I think it's fantastic. Massive colors, really bright, and honestly, it's so big and the steam coming off, you see the color of the steam like the color of the actual spring. So there's like blue, yellow, and red steam coming off. There are great overlooks. When you're on Fairy Falls Trail, you definitely have to see that overlook. But also walking up right next to it is such an awesome sight. The only concern is if it's windy, make sure your hat is tight, because you probably will lose it if you do not have it tight. However, there is a lot of other stuff you can do in this area. There's other geysers, other really cool sights. There's this one large crater-looking thing that has waterfalls going into it, and they pour out into a river that's right along the road. That is such a cool sight. And Fairy Falls, which is a trail you can take from Grand Prismatic Spring, is a very pretty sight as well. But kind of an afterthought when you're at Grand Prismatic Spring even. Still, it would probably be like a top tier attraction if it was in one of the eastern national parks, but in Yellowstone, there's just so much to see and do that it does not match Grand Prismatic Spring or come close to a lot of the other things, but it's still a beautiful sight and definitely worth doing. The hike is pretty flat and very easy. To add to this, the Grand Prismatic Spring area does have a lot of variety. There are different kinds of geysers and geothermal features. Some are bubbling, some are these large holes, different colors of all sorts. The only concern is that it can be pretty crowded, so keep that in mind when you go, but still, really, really awesome area. There are also a few lesser known geyser basins that are nearby the Grand Prismatic Spring area, which is at the Midway Geyser Basin, by the way. For example, I believe there's one called Black Sand Basin. That one had a pretty cool geyser, actually erupted a good 10-20 feet. So it's very cool to see some of the lesser known areas that are a bit quieter. Still hard to find parking, but very cool. Definitely like those areas a lot. However, we then went to possibly the most famous area in Yellowstone, the Upper Geyser Basin. This is where you can find Old Faithful. Old Faithful is such an awesome sight. There are so many cool ways that you can see it in different times of day. It's awesome. It does get pretty crowded when it erupts for the most part, but if you go in the evening or early morning, you're fine. You're not going to see a lot of people. And there's a lot of other geysers here too. Castle Geyser, Beehive Geyser, Lone Star Geyser, all that is in this area. There's a lot of different geysers, and they're all pretty short walks away. There's other cool features similar to that of the Midway Geyser Basin or like Mammoth Hot Springs, and there's so much to see in this area. I love this area a lot. I did the Observation Point Trail, where you can see Old Faithful erupt from above, which is definitely a cool experience. I highly recommend it. Getting to see it from above like Grand Prismatic Spring is really, really cool. And there's a lot of other times I saw it, because we were staying in the Old Faithful area that night, I did get to see quite a bit. I saw it erupt from way up there, I saw it erupt around 4-ish, I saw it erupt a bit later in the evening when the sun was low-ish, but not completely low. And what was really cool about that is the water erupted high enough that there was kind of a silhouette cast, so the water looked like a shadow. That was possibly the coolest view I got during the entire trip. These photos alone were an absolute highlight for me. It was just amazing. And in the Old Faithful area, yeah, there's crowds, but there's a lot of quiet areas. You can just sit, look at the geysers in front of you. It's really, really cool. Seeing Old Faithful at sunset was awesome as well. I didn't actually see it erupt, but I did get to see the geyser area and the beautiful colors of the sunset. Now, I should probably touch on my only issue with this trip. It did actually benefit a few things, but that is that there's kind of some mini towns that are in the Old Faithful, Mammoth, and Canyon areas now. There's a lot of restaurants and more hotels. I understand why they're doing this, because a lot of more people are coming, so they're trying to accommodate more casual guests. And it is kind of cool to have a bit of a homey feeling area where you can just go outside and it's like your backyard is the geyser. Because we were staying in this cabin that was a good minute walk from the geyser, so that was such a cool area to be in. It doesn't hurt the park too much, but it does make the place feel a little less wild. But overall, I love this area of the park, and it was a fantastic park. And do I consider it the best in the world? Absolutely. There is not a single place I'd rather go back to, or a single place I think is more impressive, because while there are some more individually impressive sites in national parks, like Denali or Yosemite Valley, Yellowstone has so many amazing sites. And there's no park that has more to see and do than Yellowstone that I've been to. It's simply fantastic, and you have to visit it at least once. It takes some effort to get to, but it is absolutely worth it. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Comment down below any questions you have about tips for Yellowstone, and like the video if you enjoyed it. Subscribe to help support the channel and so you can get more content soon. I'll see you next time.